Hello everyone, this is Highlander from MTG Cardsmith doing another custom Magic the Gathering card review, and today we have a card by Ashdust. And this card is called Jin Cabaretti Crooner. Okay, so this is sort of clearly flavored around the new set, whose name I'm blanking on for some reason. I'll let you fill in the blanks there. New Capenna, there we go. So this is a 1 in Cabaretti. This is a Naya card for a Raccoon Bard Rogue. It looks a little bit like Sly Cooper. And he's a 2/3 for 4. Okay, so his stats are pretty bad. So let's see what else we got going on here. It's legendary, of course. Everyone loves making legendary creatures. He's got Menace. Excuse me. Is there something particularly menacing about this guy? I mean, he's not very menacing to me. Okay, Jin Cabaretti Crooner enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter on it. Oh, okay. So he's a 3/4 menace. Whenever one or more creatures you control attack, create a treasure token. Okay, so hold on. Whenever one or more creatures you control attack, create a treasure token if Jin is tapped. So more... Okay, got it. Then if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Jin. And you can pay his same cost to create a 1/1 green raccoon creature token for each counter on Jin. Okay. This card does a lot of things. So let's sort of go over this again real quick. It's a 3/4 menace for 4, which again is a little bit under par, but whenever one or more creatures you control attack, create a treasure token if Jin is tapped. So you can either pay his cost, tap him, then you get a treasure, or you can attack with him, and you get a treasure, but you have to attack with at least one thing. And it can also be these tokens you're creating, by the way. And then if you attack with 3 or more creatures, put a +1/+1 counter on him. So if you have a lot of creatures, and then you can make creatures for each counter on him. So this guy's like a really slow, sort of really slow engine, right? It's sort of like, I mean, if you can, so like let's ignore the treasure and the ability for a moment. If he just got bigger every time you attack with 3 more creatures, I mean, it wouldn't be particularly great, but if you were able to sort of do that reliably, he becomes like a 4/5 menace, and then he becomes a 5/6, and then you start adding in the fact that you don't have to attack with Jin himself. You can in fact create tokens. So like another way to play this guy is you sort of just play this guy, and you kind of sit back, and then you start like making a token every turn, and eventually you'll have 3 tokens. You attack with 3 of them, you put up a counter on this guy, now you're making 2 tokens a turn, and then again you attack with 3 tokens, you got like 1 left over or something, and then now you can make 3 turns, so it's like a really slow engine, but eventually he'll start making a lot of counters. And then the treasure just sort of helps offset the cost of his ability. So yeah, I mean, this is certainly a fine card. There are some issues with this card. I mean, the art is pretty abysmal. I mean, not abysmal. Sorry, the art is fine, but the background is pretty terrible, right? Like just this gray background. It's pretty distracting and ugly. So I have to take points off for that. A Raccoon Bard Rogue with Menace doesn't quite hit the flavor for me there. Like, obviously you're trying to give him some kind of evasion, so he's a little hard to block, right? But you could go sort of the white route here and maybe give him, like, can't be blocked by creatures with power, whatever, something or less, or you could, or I think that's in green sometimes. You can't be blocked by creatures with, power 2 or less, or something. You can give them some kind of evasion that way. If if you wanted to. It's not the end of the world, but he doesn't particularly look very menacing to me. I mean, that's just more of sort of a flavor thing, right? Like, you could clearly make this guy, like, you could flavor this guy completely differently, and the menace would totally work. So from the design standpoint, the menace is fine. It's just from a flavor standpoint, it seems a little strange. You have some formatting issues here. This ability and this ability should be separated, as well as this ability as well. I'm guessing the reason you didn't is because there wasn't enough space on the card. And generally, if that's the case, I suggest you just make the card simpler. You could easily just remove this treasure token clause here, because the treasure token thing, like, it doesn't really add anything to the design of this card. It makes the card a little bit stronger, but you could do that pretty easily by, like, getting rid of this ability. You can keep this 3 or more creatures attacking thing, and you can reduce the cost of this by like 1 or something. I mean, you're only creating 1 counter, one token, at least at the beginning. So that's probably what I would do in this situation. I mean, again, if your text isn't fitting on the card, it's generally, you can think of that as a little bit of a red flag. And I'm not saying you can't have cards with a lot of text, but I'm saying it's better to have cards with less text if your design supports it. And here, I think your design clearly supports it. Like, the main thing he does is get bigger and make tokens, and him getting bigger means he gets to make more tokens. The treasure thing is kind of just tacked on there, right? So it's like, you could get rid of this treasure ability and the card would still function the same, basically. So that's what I would suggest that you do. And then you can probably reduce the cost of, you can kind of essentially almost have this exact same thing by just reducing the cost of his activated ability. And it's like, yeah, okay, you're gaining a little bit more mana there. So it's not exactly the same, but it kind of works out. So yeah, I mean, overall, this card, it's a fine card. I don't have too many issues with the design other than, most of my issues with this card are flavor and, complexity. Again, I think you can get rid of that ability, which I just talked about. And, I wouldn't say it's like particularly, it's not a particularly inspiring design, but it's certainly completely fine. I mean, I guess like him getting more, being able to make more tokens based on his power, that's pretty neat. And of course, if you have other ways to put counters on this guy, then he kind of just goes off, right? So like, if you're able to put additional counters on this guy, which doesn't seem difficult to do, then he kind of goes off pretty fast. So powerful card, very slow card, but that's fine. I mean, you can always just kill this guy. So yeah, I mean, I think this card's fine. I think I'm gonna give this one. So yeah, between a 6 or a 7. I think this particular design would probably be a 7 out of 10 normally, but I'm gonna have to go with a 6 out of 10 just because of the sort of formatting issues you have. The fact that these abilities aren't spaced apart. The battlefield here is capitalized. Yeah, so that's really the main issue here, and the art. The art's a pretty big one, and then the flavor. So those are kind of they're. It's not necessarily the design of this card that's I have issue with. It's more just the presentation of it. So I think if the presentation was spot on, this would probably be a 7, maybe even an 8 out of 10. But because of the issues of presentation, I give this one a 6 out of 10. So that is my review of Jin Cabaretti Crooner. Thank you guys for watching.